The first image is of a bloody knife and a woman in bed giving birth to a child. This is Carrie's mother, and this is how Carrie's life started. The knife her mother had in order to kill her, but when she arrived, she actually couldn't do that. And so it was that Carrie's unhappy life began. My name's David Carson. I'm the director of the movie, and I'm sitting here to do a commentary with
Victor Goss. I was the director of photography on this film with David.
And Victor's work won him an ASC nomination for the movie, which was great. Victor and I have worked together on many movies, and we enjoy working together, and we bounce off each other really well. It was a pleasure and an honor for me to have him working on this film.
Yeah, likewise. And we've done a lot of projects in the past and many in the future, I hope.
For anybody who's seen the Brian De Palma movie, and that is many, many people, this movie starts completely differently. The idea that Brian Fuller had when he wrote this movie was to tell the story following much more closely to the book that Stephen King wrote. And so therefore we're now in a scene where at the end of all the events that happen in the film, the detective, wonderfully played by David Keith, is actually starting to interview all the people who knew Carrie White throughout her life. People ask me why I wanted to do a remake of a classic, which is what Brian De Palma's movie is, and one that was so well known as a horror film. The reasons are several and relatively interesting, because first of all, when it was mentioned to me, I thought, how can you possibly do this again? But then I read Brian Fuller's script, which was really, really good. And it was completely different from Brian De Palma's movie because he followed Stephen King's novel very, very closely and made it a completely different kind of experience dealing with it. But I still wasn't completely convinced, so I thought that maybe the horror film aspect of it was very particular to a generation, which was the generation about the time that it was made. And at the time, my daughter was about 13 years old, and I thought, well, I'm going to try and see if she has a particular reaction to the first movie that was made about Carrie, and whether that would give me a clue as to whether I should come and help do the new one. Well, I sat her down with two of her friends, and they watched the movie, and at the end of it, I went, so what do you think? And they said, well, it's not very horrific. And I went, what do you mean? It's about this poor girl and her domineering mother. And they said, well, she wasn't very domineering. We don't really see the problem with it and why it wasn't horrific. And so I said, well, one of the big images that I remember when I saw it all those years ago, which frightened the wits out of everybody who saw it, was the last image where the hand suddenly comes shooting out of a grave. And it made everybody in the movie houses gasp, I remember, when I saw it. And the children said, well, we could see that something was going to happen. So I said, what do you mean? Well, they said the camera was obviously treating it as a dream sequence. And because things were slightly different and it was misty and everything like that. And then the camera came along and it looked at the ground. And it was obvious that something was going to come out of the ground. And I think it was that moment that made me think, okay, I think we should do this again. And it would be very interesting to see how a new generation reacts to the version that Brian Fuller wants to tell of the story. And so that's how I came to direct it, with great help from my daughter.
Yes, as a director of photography, when I was offered the project, I was intimidated by the fact that this is such an important cult film. And Brian De Palma's work has been in the film has been revered for a long time. So, what are the challenges that you face when you try to reinterpret the same material that's been done by a master? It presents challenges because, there's an idea where, you want to do the best work that you can and you can improve on the existing material. But I think the issue here was maybe seeing this story at a different time, at a later date, when, the mores and the practices and the techniques and stuff of filmmaking maybe have advanced or retarded, and whichever it is. And how do we find a way to take this material that's so familiar to its fans and continue to make it interesting? So I think there's a lot of values in the film that we wanted to keep and some that we wanted to add texture to. And so it was an interesting challenge.
One of the things that we decided to do to make a complete style of the film was to make sure that we shot it very intimately, so that it was very, very close as the picture is now, but it's also, the picture is very, very handheld, you might say. And so we decided to do the whole thing as a handheld production. And this does have the effect of making the action very intimate. It allows us to get really close to Carrie and to the reactions of all the other actors, and to also put cameras in interesting and different places.
Right, and I think that Stephen King's work is deeply psychological, and one of the things that I've found working in film is that the inner dialogue of the character is something that is revealed by intimate, close shots. And, the challenge that you face in shooting something that's a lot of close-ups is that you do have a tendency to, become claustrophobic. So you have to be able to season that with dramatic shots, graphic shots that give you relief so that you can go back in for that emotional intensity that's in these characters' face. And, of course, Angela Bettis, who plays the role of Carrie, is a wonderful actress, has so much going on behind those eyes.
This discovery scene is a very, very, very crucial scene, obviously, when she discovers she has her first period. That also follows on from what Victor was saying about the fact that what Carrie discovers, not only about herself, but about these peculiar powers that she seems to have, is very, very central to this telling of the story. Because she realizes, little by little, what's going on and what's been going on in her life, and that she has these telekinetic powers. And the question then, for a modern audience, becomes, in terms of bullying, which is very, very much talked about subject, great concern to people, what happens if one of your subjects has these powers? What happens if you bully the wrong person? And what can she do about it herself to deliberately protect herself? So are telekinetic powers something we should pay attention to? And I believe in the book there are comments by telekinetic journals and things like that Stephen King has written to make it seem as if the telekinetic aspects of a personality can actually protect the personality and take incredible revenge on the things that are done to them. This is a particularly heartbreaking scene, and one of the first times that we see the result of a telekinetic reaction in the exploding of the light bulb. And she really believes that she is.
Now, just to shift gear, here's an example of one of the graphic shots that I was talking about. We're able to, pull out of this intimacy, and it gives us a breather so we can pop right back inside what's going on inside these people's heads and so forth. I wanted to shift gears here just for a second because I was thinking about Mario Tosi, who was the cinematographer of Brian De Palma's film when it was done. And of course, we enjoyed the film, and it had wonderful photography in it. I actually turned out that my father was good friends with Mario Tosi, and when I started out as a cinematographer, I was looking for an Eclair 16mm camera, and I found one for sale. And when I arrived at the house, it was Mario's house, and he had long graduated from 16mm to 35, and I purchased his Eclair from him, and that was a camera that I started my career with. So I felt a really deep connection to Mario's work because of that, and I always respected and looked up to him. And he actually provided me with my first camera.
Well, it'll have to be disciplined. In the meantime, I think...
Let me talk about the camera situation on this show. We actually, Dave and I talked about this for a long time, wanted to be very free with the camera. We wanted the camera to be able to interact with the actors. We wanted to allow them freedom of movement. So, of course, we immediately wanted to use a lot of handheld. I do think at some point we ordered a dolly, but I don't think it ever came off the truck. We had several cameras. Always at least 2 cameras in a scene. But because we had so much freedom of movement and so forth, we had to allow ourselves a lot of room on the set to work with. So we were very careful to provide environmental lighting. In other words, we would try to do our lighting setups from outside the set, coming through, windows and so forth, where the light would naturally come. That way, it would allow us to find angles and variations on angles that didn't require a lot of specific setting up. And it was a theme that we used throughout the film. And I think that the handheld motion and so forth and the freedom of the camera really sort of gives a sort of motion and movement with the story.
I certainly know that from the directing point of view, the choice of the handheld camera was very, very important in the film. And looking at Angela's work, it certainly did give her the freedom to express this character as, somebody who lived in a different world because of the way that her mother behaved to her, and the mother forced her to behave, forced her to dress, and all those other things which made her an outcast at school, forced her to be an outcast at school. It was important to me, working with her, that she had the freedom to, very subtly as she did, express all the things and fears and hopes and dreams that are going on in her head, all filtered through this extraordinarily abusive background that she'd had from her very birth, when her mother really wanted to kill her.
And David, think of the challenge that it must have been for Angela. I mean, having to follow in the footsteps of Sissy Spacek, She had so much vision, I felt, when I was watching her through the lens, in the character, that she really knocked it out of the park. Where did you get those little dynamite sticks?
I think somebody went to the pharmacy and spent a lot of money.
God, I love the close-ups in this film. But then I'm biased.
Well, they're focusing on all these little thoughts that are going on through everybody's heads. It's the claustrophobia is exactly the right image for it that you mentioned before, and Angie manages in the long shots to get the feeling of an abused girl, completely lonely, completely in her own world, outside time, the time and space that everybody else is in.
Wow, David, do you remember this day? I think this was our first day of exteriors,
Yes.
and we shot until the sun went down. It was almost midnight for our last shot.
That's right.
Yeah, amazing.
Yes, this was a day I think on which we had the digital cameras, and I think that they had some kind of problem with the focus or something. Then the digital cameras weren't completely as well sorted out then as they are now, were they?
Well, it was the first day. We had 4 Vericams, and I think, there probably was some trimming that we were doing.
Not that I'm saying it was the cameras, but
No,
made
it's
us
just
late in the day.
Yeah, one of the things that happens, especially when I come onto a show, is that everybody's already been up to speed, and I have maybe 2 weeks of prep, maybe 3 if I do the first week on phone. And so, usually the last thing that happens on location is to get all of the gear together, and it's always last midnight sort of preparation. And so I know that we had the first and second cameras sorted out, but there were some other things that we needed to do that we hadn't gotten around to on that first day. But I mean, that's typical. Thank God for post-production.
Hi. What are those? Breasts? I wish I had some. You have to wait a few years. You'll get them. And I bet they'll be real pretty, too. No, I won't. Mama says good girls don't. She said what? Good girls don't get.
Mother's like a total hypocrite. She's like a C-cup.
Mama says she was bad when she made them. That's why she has them. Calls them dirty pillows.
Afternoon, Margaret. Carrie, get over here. What did I tell you? Calm down, Margaret. We were just talking. Don't tell me to calm down, poor girl. Now, Margaret, I asked you not to call my daughter that. Suck it, you cow. Stop. Carrie, get to this house right now. Do yourself a favor and run away from home. Now, quiet. Martha says I got boobs because I was a slut. She said what?
So this is the scene where her telekinetic powers explode at a young age, which is what the older Carrie is remembering as she comes home, and how the house got damaged by everything that happened. The more her mother beat her and forced her to pray and was cruel to her, the more extraordinary things happened. The furniture crashed about, and then suddenly the skies opened, and rocks and meteorites fell on the house.
It was really hard to keep those in focus. Just kidding.
What's interesting about this, as far as, again, the stones falling in the book, is the way they talk about it there, is the violence, the complete violence of her reaction, which of course she doesn't control. She basically explodes. And then puts her cross back on sign, goes inside. And inside this house, which of course was built, the interior was built on a stage, we tried to show just how far her mother had gone and was trying to take her.
Why didn't you tell me, Mama? I was so scared.
I prayed. The curse would never happen to you.
It's not a curse, Mama.
Patricia Clarkson being wonderful in this role. I mean, her mother, who wanted to kill her when she was born, is undeniably a monster. And yet Patricia Clarkson was able to give her a humanity and a level of understanding and hurt and need that was remarkable. It made things worse, really, than just having her as an out-and-out villainess.
No, Mama, it wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything wrong.
Eve was weak. Say it.
Eve was weak. You should have told me, Mama. The girls all make fun of me.
Ask for forgiveness of yourself.
I didn't sin. You sinned. You didn't tell me and they laughed.
Don't you know I can see inside you? I can see your sin as surely as God can. Go to your closet and pray.
No, Mama.
Be to God. And your sins will be washed away.
Working with these two wonderful actresses was a real joy for me and for everybody. It was extraordinary. Their commitment to the film and to the characters was just tremendous. And this set that they worked in, which was the house, basically the inside of the house. Victor, I think that I'm right in saying that you expanded the idea of giving them complete freedom, because am I not right in saying you lit the whole thing from outside? You didn't have any lights inside, is that right?
In this particular case, yeah, I mean, the house was sort of full scale. There weren't any, extra wide passageways or anything to sort of create the feeling of claustrophobia. It was a really beautiful set by Steve Gagan. The closet I think the closet was a little expanded so he could get the camera in there. But because of that, it was, and because, we wanted to be able to move the camera around and not be restricted into pointing into one corner or another. So that was, the obvious solution. And it has a very natural look to it because of that. And what happens is you'll sometimes find yourself moving into an area where there's not a lot of light in somebody's face or something like that. And it's always easily handled by keeping an eye light near the camera to pull the eyes out of the shadows, and it really seems to work okay.
To me, this is a very, very interesting thing as far as directing actors and helping them create their characters. To have the camera prying on their thoughts or close enough to really see what they're thinking and what they're creating is an incredible asset in a film like this. Because the more personal the camera becomes, the more the actor is able to communicate. I know we have many action movies and things like that. This is why our cameras, even in here, were in this scene we're looking at now, were handheld.
Well, don't you think also, David, that, from the standpoint of the actor, to be on the set and to be aware of everything that's around me, it's very difficult to, create a reality while you're at a film set being surrounded by lights and people and all that sort of stuff. But it's I seem to clock it in the actor's eyes that them being able to, feel the camera close, knowing that the camera's, focusing on them, they know where it is, also creates a relationship between them and the camera that's closer to them, which is something that I felt that I noticed. I don't know for sure. I didn't do a survey, but
I agree. I think that that's absolutely true. The one complements the other, and the one helps the other.
I've written a lot about the work that I've done, and my sort of big pitch about this is that the camera really needs to be a player in the scene as well, because after all, in a way, it's the most important player. It's the player of it's playing the observer.
Well, that's much to do also with the actors and how aware they are of the camera. Ingmar Bergman, the great film director, used to say that just as an actor knows when he or she stands on the stage that the audience is over there and can identify the people that are coughing and chewing things and doing stuff while they're working on the stage, so in front of the camera, the actor must always be aware that the audience is down the lens, is inside the rectangle of the matte box.
Right.
And if you are aware of that, you then, you're not simply somebody wandering around a set being observed and photographed by a camera. You're actually somebody who's playing at the camera. So just as when you're on the stage, if you turn your back on the audience, you do it deliberately, for a deliberate reason, and you know they are still behind you. When you turn your back on the camera, the same feeling should still be there. And some actors, many of them in this movie, have that idea, which I think is tremendous. And it makes a huge difference to the communication of a performance.
Yeah, I've done big shots where the camera was back far, the other side of the set, maybe behind the lights or whatever, and have had prominent, experienced actors say, "Where's the camera?" So it's probably a good idea to avoid that situation, but an actor needs to have an audience.
Yes, it's a hard concept to think that the audience is down the matte box, but if you can lock onto it, it does make a huge difference.
David, the cast in this film is so exquisite. Rena Sofer, she's so amazing. Tell us a little bit about the casting, because the reason I ask is because as part of my preparation is to try to, take on the birth of the director's vision before we actually start shooting. Yet it's very difficult to as a cinematographer, to spend time with the director the week before the show because the last-minute casting is being done. So, I know that you had a good experience. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, the real central part of the casting was Carrie and her mother, and we were very lucky to find that Patricia Clarkson was interested in doing the film, but there were a lot of other people who were interested in playing Carrie, but there just wasn't one like Angela. And it was one of those old stories that we talked about a lot of people, and that we met a lot of people together with the network and the production company, which NBC and MGM, just in case you didn't see the line at the start of this film. And but it was one of those cases that when Angie walked into the room and we were together, there was no question but that she should play this role, because of the extraordinary understanding she immediately had for a girl with these problems. The rest of the casting, though, fell into place very, very simply and easily. It was really, really well handled by the casting directors.
How did you find Emily DeRaven? She wasn't so big back then.
I was introduced to her by casting directors.
She's so cool.
Yes. This is part of the film that I was really interested in, which is sort of from the book again, where Carrie shows that she's able to follow the idea of what it is that she's got. Doesn't just do things accidentally. She does things. And instead of just sitting down and letting it happen, she decides to go and find out what it is she's got, what it is that she does, and how she can exercise, how she can have an influence on it. That to me is an element in the character which is really, really interesting, because it indicates that it's not somebody who's just a bad seed and not just a crazy person, or somebody that's so damaged by the treatment that she's given, starting with her mother and then by everybody else, that she doesn't just collapse in front of it. She actually takes it on and tries to figure out what it is she's got, and that will go on as the movie progresses. You'll see how that happens.
I just want to interrupt you here for a second. I often wondered why it was that I chose to use this army green lighting in this set, which is so unusual. And I realize now, watching it, is that I took it right off of the color of the set walls.
Brazil? What does Brazil have to do with getting your booty wet? Does it look at the shape of the country? It's cut
Oh, I love this part.
You mean you made the light match the colors of the walls?
Well, looking at the color of the walls and playing with, the gels and stuff, nothing really seemed to work. So I just started, putting some sort of a yellowish green in there, and it just sort of looked right against those walls. I mean, it is different.
Yeah, I think you were right, but I think you also were working together with a great designer, Steve Gagan.
Oh yeah, Steve was definitely. Steve does half the work. I do the other half when it comes to that.
Well, I think that he decided that the part of the plot, or we decided, that all of us together, that the part of the plot that was the present, that is the detective interviewing everybody who knew Carrie White and building the story of what happened.
So it had sort of a 21st century tone to it.
Well, it was just very, very different in terms of images. It was sort of realer and more gruesome.
Right, I do remember that conversation. Yeah.
Because the reason that it needed to be more real and more gruesome is basically because this film is about a town that for some inexplicable reason burnt down. And that wasn't the case in the first film. In the first film that Brian De Palma directed, what we reckoned was that the gym got burnt and the people in it were damaged and stuff like that happened. But in this story, as in Stephen King's book, the town burned down, because as Carrie went back through the town, the whole place exploded and things burnt as she went by. So here come the police and everybody else going, why did this town burn down? And are trying to find an answer to it. Was it magic? Was it something supernatural? Or did somebody torch it? And that's the questions that he's trying to unravel in the real world. But at the same time, it gives us a really good idea of what her classmates and the people who are around her and her contemporaries actually thought of her, because they're able to answer those questions in a third-party situation, which gives the story much more depth and reality, adds all sorts of different strands of interest to it. And of course, playing it backwards like that is Stephen King's idea in the book. He puts it together from many, many quotations from papers, from examinations, from trials, and you have that question eventually not answered, but answered a little bit.
Well, she's already been reprimanded.
Not good enough. This is her first year at U?
Yes, and we're very pleased.
You're pleased?
This was an interesting scene from the point of view of the acting and the freedom.
So that is a slightly
I think that,
version of events.
as I remember it, we put
Besides the
two cameras on the ground near the principal's desk, which is this chap, and we allowed the actors to play them without having to worry about to play the entire scene. And we picked it off as we went in several takes in different positions. Am I not right, Victor?
I think so, yeah. And also, as far as the lighting was concerned, because it was a small room, like I said, Steve Gagan, the art production designer, and myself would, I'd do half, he'd do the other half. Basically, the source of lighting here became the windows. There were two windows in this room. We put a nice slash in through this main window here from behind the principal, and then another second one in the smaller window in the back, which sort of filled up the room a little bit so it wasn't completely shadowed. And it allowed us to even, aim at the windows and whatever and not be fettered by any lighting coming from the floor inside the room. Not that that's so unusual. I mean, I think that's pretty much the way, most people would approach it. But because of the fact that we wanted to have, to just have a turnkey lighting situation, and then to be able to go wherever the hell we wanted to with the cameras, really, freed us up to do things that we probably normally wouldn't have had time to do. Because there's a lot of coverage here.
I don't think you know your daughter quite as well as you might think, if I may.
I think it's nice, too, to push the envelope, to see how much you can get away with in terms of, burning up the windows and flares and stuff like that.
IQ 140, detention 70.
Sort of helps create the tone of what's going on in the story.
I think it adds tension, rather like the policeman scenes we've been talking about, but gives you a little bit of a different kind of reality. The atmosphere in here is very, very tense.
Yeah. Well, also sometimes I'd forget to bring my light meter to the set, so it made it a lot easier.
We didn't have to wait to get it right. Very, very effective, though.
Parent-teacher night is first Tuesday of even-numbered months. Hope you stop by.
I think that the attitude in Stephen King's work is very well set off by different atmospheres that contrast each other, but which are related to reality. So you have that very stark scene, which we've just seen in the principal's office, and suddenly we're in a bowling alley full of brilliant color.
Right now, wasn't this the bowling alley with the little small Canadian balls?
Was it?
Yeah, it looks pretty normal to me. We did find one, though. I think it was like 4 lanes, and they had, the small
Oh.
Canadian-style bowling
No,
balls.
this is a bigger one than that
Yeah.
one. But here is all the bright stuff and the bright things that we normally associate with young people and everything. And here are these two extremely evil. Here we're introduced to Billy, who's played by Jesse. Very, very well played
This is Carrie White's
by him.
She walks around like she gets her massive
And in this bright atmosphere,
She's always freaking out.
here they are, which contrasts fantastically well with the stark quality of the previous scene. So I think that, in my opinion, that the characters and the way that Stephen King draws the characters, and of course, from his book, the way Brian Fuller drew the characters, is such that it makes it not what we call a, in quotation marks, horror film, which is often to do with slashing and blood and things like that, but very, very much to do with characters. And this is to do with characters and how the various clashes of the characters work out, especially when one of them has a really big problem.
Yeah, Billy's really evil.
Yeah.
So's Emily.
Yes, they made a terrific pair together. And now from the computer, as far as the movie's concerned, here she is. Here's Carrie actually investigating what she's read to see if she actually does have some kind of power that she can control. The intensity of the concentration that Angela used during playing these scenes was really quite magnetic. I mean, totally believable that she's making that happen.
I think even Angela was impressed by her mental powers here.
Well, she couldn't see the wires.
Was that wires, or was this some other technique used?
Oh.
I think there were some secret techniques here, weren't there? Wasn't magnets, was it?
Is that why you asked me about casting? You mean I put all people all through, can you move these balls on this table?
Have you said your prayers?
I'm saying it now, Mama.
I'm talking to you.
I said I'm saying them now.
And so,
That scared me while we were shooting it.
well, it's great that she's not in control. She's not fully in control of the whole thing. And whoa.
We should have a rule. If they do something in a Freddie Prinze Jr. movie, we're not allowed to do it.
What are you talking about?
You want me to take Carrie White?
Here's another really great performance. Both of these were terrific.
Freddie bets this dude that he can turn some she geek into the problem.
It's Candice McClure and Toby. Toby plays his character as if he's Tommy Ross is a good guy, but you can always see the conflicts that he has.
It's totally mean. She'll think it's a joke, and so will everyone else. Just leave her alone. She'll say no.
She'll say yes. She likes you. You're cute and non-threatening. Take her to the front room. Take her and be nice to her and hold her hand. Please.
Oop, I sense a dolly move here. I think we pulled it off the truck.
No. We used a dolly?
Steadicam.
No, I think you're probably right, because we wanted people to actually see that she really was studying what was going on the computer. She was studying the telekinetic powers that she had to try to understand them. But of course, as soon as Tommy arrives, she shuts it all up quickly.
So if you don't have a date for prom, you want to go with me?
I remember this scene was particularly difficult because it was a very, very small room. We could hardly get the camera back far enough to get the over.
Yes.
Carrie,
Does everyone think they can go on playing tricks on me?
it's not a trick.
I know who you hang around with.
Who I hang around with has nothing to do with this. I'm asking you because I want to.
You know what I like about this portrayal of Carrie in this film is that Angela just seems to have this confidence inside her that is so strong. And when it comes out, it really is exciting.
Okay, you're not.
I mean, for somebody who is so, teetering on the edge, she has this sort of inner sense of who she is that I think is sort of a unique addition to the story.
What about Sue Snow?
What about her?
I think that's a good observation, because I think
Why aren't we taking her?
it's what makes the story work.
I asked.
There's something about her that's not crushable.
Really.
Yes, that's it.
And as she learns more and finds out more, she becomes stronger.
I mean, if it gets back to Sue that I told you this, she'll kill me.
I won't tell.
She thinks you're really interesting.
Now that's our third camera. So we were shooting with 2 cameras and had a third camera low.
Yes.
It's the kind of stuff that not only gives you an editorial break, but also gives you some visual variety.
I think it was very important because where we used it was when she wants to believe what he's saying. She desperately wants to believe what she's saying. So that linking that up with the shots from underneath, with the light in the background blowing out in the windows, made it a kind of sort of magical shot to try to actually echo her feelings a little bit. Because for her, it is magical, and she wants it to be so true.
Yeah, I'll go.
Pick you up at 7:30.
Yeah, she's very, very unique, I think, as an actress.
It's gonna be fun. Don't worry.
What I liked about the way Toby played this was that he does it because he has to, but by the time this scene finishes, there's a kind of acceptance from him, something that's just a little bit more.
Well, yeah, you can
Interesting.
see he's sort of falling for her
In a way,
a little bit too much.
See, some people are having trouble believing that you had your boyfriend Tommy take Carrie White to the prom out of the kindness of your heart.
What is that supposed to mean?
Well, both Tommy and Chris are friends.
Look, I told you. Hey, Chris and I had a falling out.
And I'd like to believe that. See, the going theory is that the 3 of you conspired to get Carrie White to the prom so you could humiliate her.
the way that these scenes are written by Brian Fuller, I think, is masterful because he's able to bring the writing back from where we're going with Carrie and her mother and Tommy and what's happening there to an objective commentary, in a way, about Carrie's character and what was leading her to do these things. So you have it happening on several levels at the same time. It was certainly one of the things that fascinated me about the script to start with.
I got invited to the prom.
So this is nighttime. In order to get the lower key necessary for the sense of night, coming through the windows is not an option for lighting. So I know that we did rig lights, probably wall hangers here for keys and so forth. Once again, giving ourselves as much, latitude left and right.
Right.
I have to try to get along with people, Mama. I'm not like you. I'm weird. Everyone thinks I'm weird. And I don't want to be. I want to try and be normal.
Oh, what a biatch.
That's one way of putting it. It-
You're not going, and that's final.
Mama, please sit down and talk with me. I'm not done talking.
Extraordinary. Boom. Extraordinary physical tension in this scene between the two of them before all the
Yeah.
effects started happening. It was like they were making electricity. They were making it.
Man, there's 2
explosion.
great actors in this room here.
Yes, that's it.
Please sit and talk with me. I want to start living my own life. I don't like yours. I'm not a witch. I just sometimes I can move things.
I should have known when you went to the fire, Connie. Sin never dies.
I'm not the only one, Mama. Other people can do it too. I read about them on the internet.
The internet.
It is the source of all evil, you know.
Something about the closeness and being able to see the people's eyes and the color and the depth in their eyes, to me, is so powerful.
You look at a girl like Carrie, right? You don't want to throw a slap her.
Well, if you follow the image of Ingmar Bergman's idea that the audience is down the lens, so the camera or the cameraman is being, or woman, is being the actual audience and is opening the way for the audience to see and pick up and feel all those emotions that are going on.
How well did you know Christine Hargensen and Sue Snell?
Yeah, but I've always been jealous of the focus puller because he gets to sit closer to the actors than I do.
And you weren't.
Well, now we all have the video, you know. We all cluster around the video to see
Yeah,
what's
we can
going on.
hide back there in
I-
Video Village.
I've always regretted that.
Yeah.
I've always loved to be by the camera, so I can see exactly what the camera sees.
You know, that's the number one complaint that I get from actors is that where is the director? And I
Right.
think the video, technology is what's done it.
Well, I'm certainly old-fashioned enough to have done that, to really appreciate being next to the camera.
You're so old-fashioned, you actually worked before there were cameras. Well, that's not exactly true. You're on stage, though.
Well, we had to wind the cameras up.
By hand, yeah. Wasn't there a little song that you sang? Because it was...
But yes, Ingmar Bergman in that particular story said that to the actor, your audience is not your director. Your audience is not your crew. If you make a funny scene and the crew laughs, that's not your yardstick.
Right.
Your yardstick is your relationship and the truthfulness that you're playing things with to your audience down the lens.
I always felt that if you could get the camera operator to laugh, that you had succeeded in telling a joke. So that must mean something about the camera. Yeah, but you brought up Bergman, so I'm going to bring up Persona. And I think that film in particular is one where I'm thinking about the eyes and the close-ups and so forth, because those close-ups were used for psychological transformation in that film. And for anyone who hasn't seen Persona, I must suggest that you take a look at it if you get a chance.
I always think of my mom. Always hang up on her, too. So, I take it you've leveled out since last Friday? Your little episode? You went all feeble in the shower. What about it?
In this scene, do you get the feeling that you're in a small room with a rattlesnake?
We were just messing around.
Very much.
It wouldn't give you a hard time.
I think that the contrast that you see quite clearly now between how Emily is dressed and how Angela's dressed is very good, especially that slightly longer shot that we used just a second or two ago. You can see how she's dressed, from another age. Poor Carrie.
You look a little bloated.
Whereas Chris Fluffy Hargensen is like just a modern girl.
You're only supposed to take like 2 ibuprofen. I take 3. Got that from Sue. She's like a total junkie. Now that you guys are all cozy, she'll have you tossing them back like Union wafers.
I'm not cozy with Sue Snow.
Really? She's acting like you're your best friend. Don't get me wrong, it's great. Just don't let her turn you into another one of her projects.
Did she say I was a project?
It's her MO. Helen's a project. I was a project. She practically talked me into getting Botox last summer. Can you believe that?
Maybe she thought you needed it.
Great moment.
Being her friend can be a little on the demeaning side. Especially when everyone in school knows why she's being your friend. Oh, and tell Sue she can say all she wants about me, but at least when I'm being a bitch, I'll come to it. Bye.
Rattlesnake is a very good word. But look at that close-up. That's just wonderful. She swallows a little nervously.
Yeah, speaking of close-ups, this
then-
was a really interesting one because we were doing it through a magnifying mirror. It was sort of interesting to try to get the focus on to start off with in the right camera angle. But I just thought it was really interesting and different. Whoops.
Hi. So, you come here often? You, have trouble coloring as well? You know, you might want to try something a little less drastic. Like this one. Carve it around the bone.
Yeah, the variability of her reactions is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Now rub them together.
She does things you don't expect.
Now smack. You can add some lip liner for a little extra warmth. Oh. That's not what that's for. Have you picked out your dress?
No, but I found one that I like.
What color?
I can't decide.
Well, I don't know. If you want to, we could do a fashion consultation thing. You could even watch it.
I don't think I want to know.
Well, anyway, I'm really glad that you're going with me.
You know, it's really interesting working in a practical location like this that's completely overwhelmed with fluorescent lights from the top, and you don't know what to do. I mean, it throws nasty shadows in people's faces and stuff. And I mean, basically every angle you have to just remove the overhead light by shutting it off or blacking it out, and then bringing in, you know, a softer, similar light from an angle that actually gets into the eyes. Otherwise, you know, you just get these raccoon sort of look. I remember here that actually we probably spent as much time lighting this set, which was this fully blasted pharmacy, than we would have if we were starting from scratch on a set, let's say.
Is not a pity thing. I don't foresee.
It's really tough to, you know, keep that overhead lighting off of, you know, nice faces, because it just brings out all of the flaws and so forth. You just got to get the light angle down around where it gets into the eyes. It's always worth the effort.
Everyone does.
Yes. Certainly is. I do remember that this was a bit of a problem. This place. Well, not a problem, but it
I
just
really like this color.
Pain in the
Doesn't
ass,
work.
is that the word you're looking for?
well, yeah.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Well, because it was just so broad, and it was like a supermarket.
And as usual, we didn't have enough time. But again, there's back to back here with the rattlesnake scene and that one, seeing those three girls working together. Wonderful. Wonderfully subtle.
Everybody's been talking. What are they saying? That you and Carrie White are having a lesbian affair. You're trying to take her to prom to throw people off. It's just that.
And now we're in.
So how did you light this,
The gym.
David? I don't see where any of the lights are coming from.
No, Victor, I don't see where lights are. Where are they?
I'm trying to remember. I think that it was sort of a barn-like roof or something, which had high skylights that were about 30 feet off the ground.
Right.
And we did get to do pre-rigging, and we got the guys up there, and we had a bank of lights coming from the left, and we had a bank of lights coming from the right. I think we used everything in the truck, all the HMIs, all the daylight quality stuff.
Right.
And we would, like, you know, turn off one bank to shoot from one side, and then turn off the other bank to shoot from the other side.
Again, so that you could move the camera with the maximum amount of movement without
Well,
having to stop and
Yeah, there was so much
relight.
going on here in this, you know, at the background, action and so forth. There's so much interesting stuff going on.
Right.
Reiterate. Oh my God.
No, I think that's right.
I don't know. I think it sort of. I get a sense of clarity is the word that comes to my mind when you're able to see so much of a room and so much
Right.
of the actors moving around. Some sort of clarity of what's going on and where you're at comes from that.
We're in a real place, also, I think. But isn't it true that with the advent of digital cameras and things like that, lighting is different in that perhaps it is not so much, but it is more specifically directional?
Well, you know, on the one hand, it's true, and on the one hand, nothing is different. It's still the same old problems that you have to deal with. But when this was made, of course, the chip, this was shot digitally. It was my first digital feature project, so there was a learning curve for me. But one of the things that I found myself doing, approaching it from all of the same directions because the sensitivity of the chip wasn't different from the film speeds that we were using when we were shooting with film. But there were some, particular problems that you have to deal with, and the latitude was much less than it is in digital photography now. So there was a lot more to battle in terms of contrast, keeping things within the range of the camera. So yeah, actually, in some ways it was harder, in other ways it was easier, and in some ways it was the same old deal. It just, it's funny. Each project is so unique that it's really hard to make a blanket statement about anything photographic, I think.
Yes, whether we've, in the many things that we've done together, whether it's been digital or whether we've been working on film, I've always been immensely impressed by not only your artistry, but actually by the speed with which you and your crews work, because you know that I'm very, very interested in what the actors are doing and in helping them with performance in any way that I can. And I've always been able to give me sort of enough time to do that, which I've always appreciated.
Well, that's a great compliment, and I appreciate that. And I'm thinking about, I think as a cinematographer, the greatest challenge that you have, especially in a feature where there's a whole body of work that starts in one place and ends up in another at the end of the story, it's important, to find out what the scene is about. But I think, the actors and the director probably don't fully know what a scene is about until, they've actually done it and are inside of it and really feel, because when a scene really gets up on its feet, it takes on a life of its own and all these new things happen. So basically you try to prepare mechanically, to allow all of that to happen. But at the same time, that also means that you can't be as specific about certain aspects of your work that you might want to. So it's always a challenge. I mean, I always approach a situation like this to try to provide you with as much time and as much space that is possible to work with, and then may find out after, we've done a second rehearsal or whatever, that, there's some specific, because it was so broad and not specific, there's some specific things that need to be attended to, like perhaps when they walk into a close-up like this, where maybe you have to, deal with that in the wide shot as well as the tight stuff, which means you don't have, that much room to work with. But and then because ultimately that's the reason that we're here, is for you and the actors to get in front of the camera. And so, I mean, as successful or as unsuccessful as I am each time I try to put that together, that's really the goal.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, I'll buy coffee next time.
But also, because he came into my mind as another great cinematographer I worked with, John Alonso, who passed away now, unfortunately. He did the same thing. He worked with high speed in order to give me time with the actors. So,
yeah, he had a much nicer personality than me too. He's
Both
a
of
very,
you-
very sweet man, although tough, real tough guy.
very tough guy, but
Yeah.
both of you are stars as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you.
How about Christine Hart? Sue Snell. Hey, have you ever been up to Irwin, up in Northern? You've never been up there? Well, see, Henry had, even in his
So David Keith finally, was playing the detective, was able to get out of his chair, and is absolutely charming. He now becomes one of these guys. He sees his prey in front of him and leads him beautifully into the huge mistakes that he's made. So he was really very much a linchpin. His authoritative performance and his inquiring, the way that he played it in this very intelligent, inquiring, non-condemnatory way, was very much the balance and counterpoint of the film. It made it all work wonderfully well.
Yeah, he's a classic character in this film. And when I think about Carrie, one of the images that comes back is David.
Absolutely, and And of course, as far as Brian is concerned, he's now brought us in front of already discussing to lead up this to the famous pig scene.
You wasn't out? No. I was just saying. I mean, it's a good joke.
And that's basically the description that everybody thinks of as far as they're concerned about what's going on here. This is a joke. But actually, this is the scene in which it gets really serious. And the character who it really impacts on is Chris, Emily de Raven's character. I don't know exactly what she was expecting, but from this point on, her character almost goes on a very slow slide from being a mean girl to basically being a killer.
Yeah, I found this scene to be very disturbing.
And much of the power of the scene is in Jesse's performance here, playing Billy, because he managed to embody that incredible cruelty, which is one step beyond where any of the children at the school were going to go. And it's his introduction into the story that makes it turn into this extremely vicious and horrific outcome. I mean, it's like, he comes into the group turns into a bunch of homicidal killers.
Fine. But you gotta cut its throat.
No way.
Don't tell me no way. You're doing it.
But once again, on the Brian Fuller Stephen King thing,
Listen to that. She's actually egging them on.
yes. But she still doesn't realize quite what she's doing. And as far as Brian and Stephen King are doing, their characters are simply developing down the path that they have to go. So it's not, we're still not in the horror. We're heading towards it.
Eddie's gonna drop a hot stack when he sees this.
Does it remind you of Ewan McGregor in Clockwork Orange? I mean, Malcolm McDowell in Clockwork Orange.
Yes.
Both, actually, both of those guys.
Very powerful, but of a completely different nature to the other children.
Right.
Now David Keith's got out of his little green room and is now able to actually go to the house and do some investigation.
Forensics.
But again, the interesting thing about this scene is what is the way that Brian Fuller wrote the scene is that he is suggesting that now David Keith, having been told all this stuff, is beginning to get into the psyche of Carrie and become part of the story in a different kind of way, which will happen in just 1 second when he finds himself back in the past.
girls have them. They're very fashionable these days.
I don't want to lose you, Carrie. Now I'm begging you, take off that dress.
Wonderful performance by Patricia Clarkson here.
And I think such a break from what she has done and what she usually does.
I'll call you if I'm
She's
leaving.
so clear that she's working from fear. She's afraid for her daughter.
They always said
And suddenly this performance arrived.
burn the dress.
She's crying for her. You see how sad she is.
Go away!
Jezebel fell from the tower.
And so you understand how much she loves her, even though she abuses her to such a huge extent.
And I love these cockeyed angles while this is going on.
Stop that! I love you, Mama. I'm sorry. Watch your fingers.
And she superbly embodies the contradictions of, belief and fanaticism. And this is a wonderfully funny little tender scene, I think, where poor Carrie is expecting Toby to arrive. I'm sorry. Not Toby. Toby's the guy who played him, but her date, Tommy, to arrive, and he's meant to be there at 7:30, and she keeps looking at the clock, and it's just past, and she's in a huge panic.
And she's so pretty.
She is so pretty, and as she walks around the room, so her kinetic energy, without her even thinking about it, picks up, things start to float. Oh, another minute has gone by. So the real and, very moving panic that she has, because she's gone to all this, she's gone down this road. Will he not come? And her mother is terrified for her. And she's oblivious to the fact that all the furniture is now floating in the air. And the furniture all falls to the ground.
Are you okay? So, did your ceiling, just collapse or something?
There's no ceiling, just collapse.
That's the work of the sound man.
That's true.
Can I see it?
No.
Now, this for me was when Cinderella saw the carriage. And she actually started to believe.
So I think that Lincoln has 400 mice power.
Was it mice who drew the carriage, Cinderella's carriage?
I think of the Walt Disney version, it was
Oh.
mice that turned into horses. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I was a kid.
And now she plays it with such tentative.
I like the way that you pulled this, stretched this and pulled it out, and let it happen. It's really nice.
But I remember as we came out, it was a great evening. Suddenly, the wind got up.
Right.
And her hair was sort of gently around her face, very wispy. And the wind started blowing everything.
And as I recall, this was one of those Friday night on location. It's probably very late, like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yes. And you can see that Tommy thinks that she's, you know, not all there, and he's doing his duty. But at the same time,
Well, and he started doing it out of the kindness of his,
Yes.
authentic kindness of his heart.
he is authentic.
How did we get that doorbell to light up?
I don't know, but where are we going now?
Couldn't do it without the crew.
There she is.
Oh, that's spooky. This is a weird chick.
I love this shot of coming up and seeing
Yeah, this was fun.
these two in bed together, just indolent,
Decadent.
sort of like the.
I have a feeling maybe that's not a cigarette that she's smoking.
Maybe it's a bad idea.
It's a good idea.
It is a really good joke.
This is a good example of how important eye light is in close-ups.
Mm-hmm.
To get that catch light in the eyes. It's
Pig blood. Or pig. Nothing. But just
what's beautiful about it also shows up in the teeth and the lips. It looks really nice in the face.
Ha.
Right, this was the time when having video cameras on the set and being able to shoot the images was really a big kick.
Jackie Talbot is exonerated.
I'm not hiding anything.
It just seems strange to me that you're not more upset.
It's been 2 weeks. They've had all the funerals. Am I supposed to wear black for the rest of my life?
No, it's not your father.
What?
You've just been through the single most traumatic experience of your life. Not you. You got something more important.
So Cinderella arrives for the prom. The gym was an interesting problem for the production because when we began, we knew that we were going to have to burn the gym down or certainly use an enormous amount of fire in all the shots of the gym in the end. So we discussed whether we should build the gym, but building the gym would have been a huge, huge thing for the production to do. Very, very expensive.
You know, like
But it was set in a gym, so we started to go around Vancouver looking for gyms where we might be able to do it. I mean, a gym that would be happy that we would be lighting real fires in there and that we would set off all the sprinklers and ruin the floor. There's not many like that.
don't be nervous.
However, we were very lucky to find a gym that was about to have itself completely refitted. And we're going to take up the floor and they were going to rebuild the thing. And so that became our solution. And this gym we're about to go into is the gym we found.
Yeah, it was great too. Very high ceilings, gave us room to move with the camera and lighting and so forth. And one of my favorite scenes is coming up as they enter.
said she'd cut off my boys if I wasn't a perfect gentleman.
So the brightness of the colors here and everything happening for Cinderella going to the ball, and the way that they gently and tentatively play the scene is very much in contrast to the watchers who are taking one more step to becoming those killers.
You feel the bucket go. Run. I'll stick around and see what happens.
You can see in this scene how she's now becoming tired of being told what to do.
Yes.
She's already there.
Look, Carrie's transformation at this point is total.
If you get caught,
Yes.
even mention my name, I'll kill you. I mean it. This is a criminal assault.
Hey.
This is gonna be good.
Looked like the set guys did a pretty good job here.
Yes.
I mean, we definitely out-decorated the original movie on this opening sequence.
I don't remember that.
Why, Charlie Ross, you look good enough to eat, honey.
Some would say I am.
Okay, if you knew how many people seriously thought you were gay, you wouldn't be joking about it. If they decide to run away together, I'll dance with you.
Oh, she spoke.
Oh my god, where'd you get that dress? I made it. Shut up. You shut up. Seriously, you made that? I did. I like to sew. It's a real simple pattern. Look at your ass! What?
Oh, okay, now who's gay, right?
Okay, after seeing your ass, the whole nun in street clothes thing, it's no longer acceptable. Oh god, here comes Norma. Life's too short.
That was a compliment.
Carrie?
So although Carrie is a little behind with her reaction to things, she's slowly being accepted.
You said Carrie has a little behind?
She is a little slow, let's put it like that.
It's nice to see her going through this.
But we can see the possibilities of her growing, just as, without beating it over the head, Emily's growing into her other role.
Well, you know what I was thinking is that probably everybody has experienced that moment when somebody says something to you that wasn't meant to be deprecatory, but you took it the wrong way and it took a few minutes to get over it.
Yes.
Funny how that pink light makes for pretty faces.
Yes.
Yes, please.
It was important to us, I think, when we were making this scene, that we tried to make it as if, you know, the school and Carrie were accepting each other.
Very pretty. Thank you.
And we tried to make it so that you could see how she might fit in
Amazing.
and how everything might have a happy ending.
Right, it's very hopeful.
Yes.
For God's sake, take it.
And as it goes on, so she becomes
Thank you.
more and more relaxed, and more accepted.
My date brought a toy gun so he could pose like James Bond for the picture.
Oh, he sounds like fun.
Yeah. They arrested him. I didn't have anybody to dance with. Spent the entire night alone until my father picked me up.
I'm sorry.
It's just a dance. I mean, it's special and all, but it's not that special. So you excited about graduation?
I don't know.
I couldn't wait to graduate.
Really?
Oh yeah, I hated high school.
Oh God. I do too. I know you're not supposed to say that, but I do. I hate it so much.
Preaching to the choir.
You know, I think one of the things that Angela needs to be credited for is her
Matters after graduation.
ability to
Except
maintain a progressive tone and the way that it's calibrated from beginning through this process of
you leave the rest behind.
her
Never even have to see any.
developing and then the ending.
Oh, but I highly recommend that.
Well, you can almost see as if she's escaping.
Everybody's different.
It's almost like the butterfly is, you know, and all those images. It's escaping from the chrysalis, and you can see the possibility of how she can escape from her mother, her situation, from everything.
Those girls over there, right now they're at their peak. They'll never
And that's, again, to go back to how Stephen King draws his characters and how they are pulled towards an inevitable ending. But hopefully, their characters are trying to escape from where they are.
Yeah, that's well said. I mean, isn't that the secret of great writing, is to be able to have the character pulled toward an inevitable ending,
Right.
and to resist it every step of the way.
Enjoy yourself.
I love this close-up. Sorry, I'm being selfish.
No, I think it is the secret of great writing, but I also think that it's really, you know, hats off to Brian Fuller for really being able to put it into a script that we can
I totally agree. yeah.
create all of this. And so you have, you know, two great writers, I think, Brian and Stephen King, working together to put this version of his novel onto the screen.
I'll see to it personally. You're excited. Do you understand the words that just came out of my mouth?
Yes.
What I think's really funny is that this scene, I don't know how many takes we did. It was the first couple of takes, Rena was walking up to the camera and the dolly was pushing toward her. And the first time the camera overshot its mark and almost overran her. And she turned and looked and the matte box was surrounding her face. It was really funny.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I actually used that as part of my gag reel. It was so funny.
You?
Which can be seen, by the way, at victorgoss.com.
Okay, thank you very much for that plug.
But it is our senior prom.
Also interesting in these situations sometimes how, you know, characters like Miss Desjardins, Rena Sofa, and
Is standing close to each other.
and Sue Snell do good, try to alter a situation. They see that they can affect it in some way, but their motives are virtually always questioned because other people can't believe that people just do good things for the sake of doing good things, or are sympathetic or compassionate for the sake of simply being sympathetic and compassionate. So it's almost like here she has the character of Miss Desjardins, the gym teacher. She's almost watching over her and trying to make sure that everything goes well.
See? Nothing to it.
Yeah, but I think probably all of us remember somewhere in our school career where there was one teacher who saved us
Yes.
from being a child, being a teenager.
Tommy?
Yeah.
Thank you.
For what?
taking me to the prom, for being so nice to me. I know that you don't like me like that, but I'm glad I got to be your date tonight.
Me too.
Toby plays this so well too. Because when she says, I know you don't like me like that, there's almost a feeling in his reaction of, oh, is she going to make a pass? I do hope she doesn't. And then she just says, thanks him. And he relaxes and accepts her. It's really sweet how they both play it.
I agree. Maybe the best scene in the film.
Best scene in the film?
I said maybe the best scene in the film. I just
You have
I think it's
many candidates for that honor.
Did I have I said that before? I think
I
it's
don't
very
think so, no.
it's very real and it's very very emotional. You know, you usually don't get that in stuff like this. Maybe it's the music. I don't know. Was that Laura Carpman, right?
Yes.
Is she good or is she good?
She's brilliant. She's brilliant.
Yeah, she is. No, she's terrific.
Like, you know, and you, I, and she, or the three of us have been teams on several films.
Right.
It was wonderful.
Your attention, please. Ladies and gentlemen,
Yeah, I sort of love this melodramatic photography here. It really suits what's going on.
It's good behavior by the principal, I think. Screaming at everybody.
Tommy, we're on here.
Yeah. Sorry.
Can we decline?
Hell no. If you win, all you do is sit up there for this cool song, wave some scepter around, and look like a jackass. Oh, and then you get your picture taken for the yearbook, so everyone can see you look like a jackass.
This is a very difficult shot, by the way. I think you did a good job in designing this and timing it. These, 360-degree table shots with dialogue are extremely difficult to pull off in terms of timing. Or at least I know from my side it is.
Well, by this time the actors were very, very aware of the camera, so they were able to make all the timings work themselves. So I pass your compliment along to the actors, of course.
I agree. Well, we had been into the show for about 3 weeks by this time.
Yes.
They're from ballots. I'm the one that Xeroxed them.
According to these, Frank and Jessica were elected king and queen.
And now Brian is leaping ahead of the story that's going on in the gym, which is also a great dramatic device. Really terrific to actually telling us what happened before we actually see it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we can now see what it is that Catherine Isabel, who plays Tina, there she is, actually gets up to, and how much of a mover she is in all of this. I mean, one of the prime mean girls of the story.
Do you recall whether we had 5 or 6 cameras on this?
I don't recall. But I know I will have gone for as many as I could possibly get.
Just money in the bank.
Yes. Now, she knows something's wrong. I mean, feelings of dread and unhappiness.
Well, and pure shock from the attention.
Yes. So here she goes, heading on a wave of acceptance and approval. Suddenly,
Oh my God, it's working.
Oh, this was a fun shot. I know we pulled the dolly off the truck for this because I remember how difficult it was to negotiate this set.
yes, it was a terrific image of
Oh yeah, I love
mother
it.
sitting in the midst of all this chaos.
Well, Patty is she's like a marble statue
Yes,
in this.
bringing the camera towards her. But it is amazing how she completely embodies and is able to express the extraordinary nature of this fanaticism, or of religious fanaticism, which is so much in the forefront of everybody's discussions these days. She so clearly embodies it, but it is with, again, great compassion and great belief in what she's doing.
I think the production value here is really good considering how tough it was and what we had to work with.
Yes.
I mean, I was impressed. Art department did a fantastic job. Steve again.
And it was our job to build up the other side against these two.
Yeah. What may be hard to believe, but we're actually shooting them up there 2 stories above the set.
Yes.
Wait now.
And there's Bully, I misspoke, but Billy pushing her to do it. You could say, like all bullies and cowards, he doesn't want to do it in case it gets pointed back to him. But so she.
He's like that satanic presence over her
Yes.
left shoulder.
And she is enjoying it and enjoying it. And
Do it. I knew you were gonna chicken out. I'm not pulling for you. This is your thing. That bucket can sit up there till graduation for all I care.
Your Shinesses, the corpse. You leave them intact.
and we go into her fantasy as the lights change. I'm not sure quite how it happened, but it was just one of those things of this production that as we headed towards this moment of the romantic waltz in the middle of the gym, that somebody discovered or asked Toby if he was happy doing a waltz, and he told us that he didn't know how to waltz. So very quickly before we did the shot, I think we had a lunch in order to do it. I remember teaching him how to do it. And he managed seamlessly. And she's back out of the flashback. So all that dance was happened in her imagination, just as he took her hand.
So how much blood was that? I think we exceeded the amount that was used in the first film.
It was a much bigger bucket, that's for sure.
Was it a bigger budget?
Buckets. In the book, I believe the bucket kills Tommy outright. So there's no hope that he's going to come back. Here, of course, he's still moving a little bit, but in the end, of course, he dies. But this transformation was very, very interesting to do because it was really a combination of the shock of what had happened to her, everything that her mother said about coming true, people laughing at her, that triggers all her powers. Of course, she says later that she doesn't remember anything that happened.
Oh, trouble in you in high school tonight.
The way she makes things happen is simply by looking at them. And the rigidity and the concentration of what is coming out of her. Her ability to move whatever she looks at because of the immense intensity of her emotion. And this is where we started to light the gym on fire. Of course, the burns were completely controlled, but when the gym is burning, and it's burning in several areas, we were only able to keep it burning for about 90 seconds at a time before the heat in there got too much, and we had to turn it off. So all these shots happened in bursts of 90 seconds to 2 minutes. The tighter, closer shots were easily done with light We didn't have to have the flames. But when you
Ouch.
see flames in them,
Yeah,
that's what was going on.
most, I'd say 90% of the flame that we see is actual physical effect.
Yes.
It's not CG.
No.
Now, what was interesting, and especially you'll see it in this shot here and in one of the later wide shots, is that everyone was concerned about, because we were shooting digital with the Vericam, that the flame would become white and washed out and wouldn't really look right. But actually, the photographic relationship with the digital imagery versus film
Right.
was not that far different. What was interesting about using the longer lenses, the particular lenses that we were using with the diffusion,
Just want
and
to
so
stop you for a
forth.
second while that shot was on there. This shot here is interesting because the heat was so violent behind her that we had to cover her back with gel
That's right.
because she couldn't stand it otherwise. The whole of her head and her back was covered with gel. But that flames were all real. I'm sorry to interrupt
no,
you. Carry on with
and to build upon that thought, where you see her, it actually looks like she's on fire. This is a direct
Yes.
effect of what the Vericam did with the way that the digital image handled or could not handle the overexposure.
Right.
It made an effect so interesting that it literally looks like she's walking through the flame.
And all of these shots here that were done with the flames and the water were potentially very dangerous. So we were very lucky to have a wonderful stunt crew who were able to look after everybody and make sure that nobody got hurt.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is all physical effect, this is real flame.
All real stuff, yes.
I think nowadays we probably wouldn't attempt it that way because digital effects are so effective.
Yes. In those days, digital effects just could not really reproduce flame of the levels that we needed. But as you can see in some of these shots, the whole place is burning. These are basically of controlled burns happening around the sides of the room and in the corners. Occasionally, like the shot you just saw, that something happens in the middle, but they're very short shots. You can also imagine how long it took to shoot all this and set it up. But the imagery of Carrie and the fire is very, very powerful, I think.
Yeah, I think that piece was CG, that piece of
Yeah.
flame.
Going along the pipes,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's distinctly different looking. So,
it was CG.
yeah, it was. I think today it would be
Much better.
invisible. Yeah.
Mhm.
But look, I mean, it's immersive. Is the effect? Is the
Yes.
visual effect? Yeah, this is the one here where it looks like she's walking through
Right.
hell itself.
And she had to be covered in this gel because she couldn't go for very far. She had flames on either side of her as she left the gym. And this, it seems, was her plan, to electrify the water so that everybody would die like that. Now you can see the center of the floor is burning as well. And this is a full-scale burn in the foreground and the background. She was again covered with gel so that she was safe. Wonderfully expressive pictures, though.
Yeah, but in all honesty about the safety, even though she was covered in the gel, I don't really think that she was very close to any of those flames. But the heat was,
The heat was
radiant
massive.
energy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this shot, I think we had 2 units running, and we were really spread out with our crew, and we didn't have very much lighting here except for 2 lights inside the house. And I remember when Candace came out onto the steps there, I had no light for her face, so I had just got a new iPhone. I think I whipped out my iPhone and used it as an eye light, which was something that I always remember about this show.
Very good independent movie shooting. Now we tried to follow the line of the Stephen King's book about how she left the gym and then what happened and why the town burnt. And basically, as she went home, which is where she was heading, walking, things exploded around her. The energy field that she was sending out knocked over telephone poles, caused flash fires to erupt, gas mains to break, which is how the town burnt. And you would say, because of how the gas station is behaving and all of that's behaving, that Carrie is probably close.
Whoops, time to run.
And lo and behold, here she is. So we were trying to express that it wasn't simply a question of she pointed at things and things happened, or she waved her arms and things happened, but the energy that was coming out of her was of itself completely destructive, combustible. The kinetic force that was surrounding her was utterly enormous. And it wasn't in her control. It was a complete reaction to what had happened, the build-up, the happiness and everything, and then the blood landing on her.
School's gutted. Said people at the prom were trapped. Only like 11 of them got out. Everybody else was cooked. Dude, the ones that got out told police something about a prank.
Go home. Don't talk to anybody.
In the book, I believe Stephen King's figures are 70 people died in the gym and 450 died in the town, which is pretty staggering.
I think that's your car burning here in the foreground, David.
Oh, is that what happened to it? We needed a foreground car. I gave them
Well,
my
it was
car.
a rental, right? Now, if we had just had quadcopters back then, this shot would have been about $12 cheaper.
So now we're out in the open, blowing things up, knocking over telephone poles. It all got really exciting to shoot. I think that sort of defines the term wrapping it around a tree.
That's unfortunate.
Yes. So she gets home.
Yeah, this is what I like about the concept of designing a shot around one lighting theme.
Yes.
Usually surprising and interesting things come from it.
The interesting thing of having Carrie in this catatonic state while all this is going on is that we were able to shoot a lot of it in close-up still and maintain our hold on her performance. But it was like her face was making everything else happen around it, so the action that she was causing was not apparent in her face. It was like a sort of reverse of what we had been doing. And even here, as she walks through and things get thrown away from her, she's still operating completely catatonically. But now, as she's in her own house, things seem to be a bit quieter.
Nice hot bath after a crazy night on the town.
You could put it like that. You need to have somebody to turn it on and off for you, though.
Right. It's such a hassle leaning forward when you're comfortable.
Yes. And it's that drop that brings her back to normality, where she is,
So to speak.
which is a very interesting way to look at it, because we saw her when it began, and now we see her at the end. She knows nothing about what's happened. She doesn't even know she's covered in blood yet.
What happened? I don't. Please tell me what happened.
Fascinating how gentle Patricia Clarkson is with her. But we, of course, have seen the beginning of the story where she had a knife ready to kill her as she was born, because she was sin personified.
Before I wake. Lord. My soul to take.
Now, of course, all the kinetic energy suddenly explodes into the room, but what I remember so powerfully about this entire sequence and the drowning sequences that happened from now on is Angela's incredible courage. I mean, she spent enormous amounts of time under the water, sometimes in very difficult situations, where And she did these stunts by herself, on her own. And it was just very, very difficult to embrace. But she embraced it, and it worked wonderfully well because she did.
Well, yeah, another way of saying it is that she literally spent almost the entire day with her face underwater.
That's right. And looking at her when she's
It's amazing.
under the water now, because the surface of the water had to be absolutely still, and she was still and looking out from underneath it. Every time that we did this, we had to fill the bath up. We had to ask her to go under. She went under the water. She would have a snorkel in her mouth, and she would stay there with the snorkel in her mouth until the water on the surface was completely flat and not moving, and then we would very, very gently remove the snorkel from her mouth. And then when it was quite still, we would then roll the camera and shoot.
Yeah, she's one of the toughest actors I've ever worked with.
Right. We had to make sure that she wasn't going to hurt herself, and but it is a sort of almost symbolic of the way that she embraced the difficulties of the role. She was really so completely involved in it. And here's another example of her underneath the surface of the water, probably thinking to herself, I do hope Candace doesn't take too long walking by the bath because I'm about to lose my air. Now this is where we departed from the book, or Brian departed from the book, because of course in the book she doesn't survive. She's not drowned in the book either. She's stabbed by her mother with the very same knife that her mother thought of killing her with when she was born, and she slowly bleeds to death. But now, in this story, she doesn't. And this was for the main reason, I think, was because the network and MGM and NBC thought that they might be able to create a series in which Carrie went somewhere else and it was built around a girl with telekinetic powers. And so the ending was left open. We reduced the number from the book. I'm not quite sure why.
This girl is one of 8 missing persons. But the problem is, we only got 7 bodies. Now, you're implying what exactly?
I'm not implying anything. I'm just giving you the facts.
What did you see on prom night?
We know so little about telekinetic power. And the question just hangs over this. Well, was she in control? Was she not? Do we have those powers? Did we have those powers once? Do people have those powers? And there are
It wasn't your fault.
many research facilities and places that conduct research about telekinesis and
We shouldn't be.
other skills that we wot not of, as Shakespeare would say.
Where am I gonna go? I don't know. Somewhere where they don't know you. I'll drive you as far as Florida. Then I have to come back.
This was a sort of tribute, in a way, to the first film, because the camera goes down and looks at the Earth, as my daughter Mimi and her friends observed when commenting on the first film. It goes down and looks at the Earth because those of us who remember that first film will remember the hand coming out of the Earth, especially when Carrie puts her flowers down. And hopefully there's a bit of tension there.
Sin never dies.
Bad dream?
So that's how we did it. Not with the hand coming out of the ground, but
Just as scary.
making it scary, yes.
Oh, now that's scary.
Do you want me to pull over?
No.
So Stephen King's story, where Carrie White dies at the hand of her mother, stabbed with a knife deep into her shoulder and bleeding to death, meant that no other questions need be asked. But when you watch this one, you have to say to yourself, I wonder what would have happened to that girl.
Well, thank you, David.
And thank you, Victor. But I do actually wonder what would happen to that film. I think to myself, I mean, what would happen to that girl? How, with those talents or those curses, could she continue to live?
Yeah. You have Brian's phone number? We should give him a call.
Okay. So thank you for doing this with me, Victor. It's been a
My
great pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who is in the movie. It was really quite a wonderful experience to work with you all.
I agree.